everybody. Today we have ourselves a fun little project. We got this big oak tree behind me and it's got some limbs out over the house. We're taking the whole tree down, which means those limbs over the house have got to go. So as you can see here, it's nice and exposed on this side because there was a cherry tree here. They grew together so that way this tree didn't have very many limbs on this side because there was competition over here. But we do have some really long limbs that go way out over the house. And it looks like we have a lot of clearance, but from another angle, you'll probably see that we don't. There's definitely not enough clearance to swing these on a rope by tying them on and cutting them off and swinging them down. There are a couple other alternative methods that we could use to get these down with just gravity, but we have ourselves a GRCS down here, which is a winch. And what we can do is we can put our rope on that winch and we can actually lift these branches up. So that's what our focus is going to be today. Half of this tree we can just send out here into the yard, we cut it and let it fall. And then about the other half, we're going to have to do some work rigging to get it down. I'm going to go ahead and jump up in the tree and then we'll get started. These first couple limbs here, I'm going to try and utilize the opportunity to test the wood, just kind of feel this tree out and see how well the fibers hang on. On the other side of the tree, we've got a limb that I need to swing just a little bit sideways before it hits the ground. So I want to see if I can do that with this tree, if I can utilize a hinge to bring the limb around. So this one's a good example. Got that hinge on an angle on the other side of the limb. It's not just pointing straight down. When I make the back cut, it should swing a little bit away from me before it breaks off. As you saw there, it did exactly that. So here's that limb. We're making our notch on the bottom side, angled away from us just a little bit. And make the back cut. This thing has to just barely miss the deck down there. There we go. It's going sideways a little bit. And then down. Clear the deck by plenty. Same thing with this limb. It's got to go sideways just a little bit before it falls. There we go. Did exactly what it needed to. Alrighty, here we've got one of the tops that leans out over the yard. It's codominant. We're going to send it nice and big and take up all the space down there. Need to get this notch trued up just right because if it's not perfect, it'll affect the way the piece falls, and it's going to just barely fit, so it needs to fall perfect. There we go. That worked out well. Here's another codominant top. We'll send it out into the yard in the same place. Again, we got to get that notch just perfect. It is worth the extra seconds it takes to get it just right. I'm going to cut these fibers off so they don't go poking me if I ever swing back to them on accident. Looking over the saw to make sure I'm lining my cuts up and pointing this top the way I want it to go there. There's little lines on the saw that kind of help you see where the piece is going to go based on the angle of your cuts. So it's good to keep an eye on those. Perfect. It's a good feeling to have success. Alrighty, now this piece of wood we're going to drop all at one time. I wouldn't normally do that because dropping big wood always tears up the yard, but the customer here is putting a pool in, and so lawn damage is not something we're really super worried about. If I recall correctly, this is the only cut I make in this whole tree removal with the big saw. Every other cut ends up getting made with a little electric saw, which is quite a testament to how well that thing works. I think it's probably one of the better electric saws for making the big limb cuts that I often end up making when we're rigging big. Gotta fix up that notch just a little bit. My bar was just barely big enough to reach across this piece of wood, so doing everything I can to make sure we get cut all the way across. Looking down in the kerf there to see how it looks across the piece of wood. Make sure we're not cutting anything too thin. There it goes. Pow. Alright, we got that side of the tree all cleared out, so now we got room for our rigging ropes. This limb is too much over the deck to just swing it away with the hinge. So we're going to go out and we're going to put a rope out here beyond the balance point, and then we're going to use a GRCS to lift it up. I've got the rigging rope in my left hand, and my right hand is running my climbing device to allow me to walk on out the limb but still keep tension in my rope. Now we're tying this on with a running bowline, just a pretty standard knot for rigging trees. Super reliable, easy to get undone, all the important things. You can see it tied onto the tip out there. We're back at the base of the limb now where we're going to make an upside down hinge. We will cut a wedge out of the top and then make a back cut on the bottom side. Making our back cut there. This is going to allow us to stand this piece up. Oop, saw got a little stuck there.
Oh yeah, if it's in fast, go slow. And go ahead and give it some more. That's good. Alrighty, I think I'm done cutting. Now I think I'm done cutting. Alright, go ahead and lift.
You can see the rigging rope lifting that up.
Oh, watch out, watch out, watch out. Keep going, keep going. Oh, it's staying on the stub. It's going to come off though at some point. Yep, keep going. There it goes. Whoo-wee. Well, that didn't go quite to plan, but it worked. You can go ahead and let it down now. I made that hinge a little too thin, I guess. That branch had a really long way to go from being almost horizontal to being almost vertical, and that was just farther than the hinge fibers were able to go. I could have left more in there, which probably would have helped, but either way, it all worked out in the end, I guess. Just could have been better. Could have been a little safer.
We're out on our next limb, and this one has got a really wide fork in the end, so we've got a second rope out here. We call this a spider leg. It's tied onto the main rigging rope and just helps keep things balanced and oriented correctly while we do our lifting.
Do you mind giving me a pull on this rigging rope? I just want to see how these balance out. Yeah, just a little. You don't even have to wrap it. Just give me some tension so the rope lays the way it will when it... Yeah. That'll work good. Oopsie. Okay, and you can go ahead and wrap it up if you want to. That's probably good. Okay, I'm backing away from it. Okay, go ahead and lift. Just keep going and don't stop unless I give you a signal to stop. Yep, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. All right. She's off of there. Plenty high still. That's a big old branch. Now I chose to cut that out there and leave this big old stub because we had this stub above it. That was just that way because there was branch intersection right there and it just didn't make sense to cut it off. So I didn't. And I wanted to make sure this didn't stand up and run into that. So that's why I cut out there. Even though I made a huge wide open notch, obviously the hinge fibers can only go so far before they start to fail. So that's why it swung around that way. And that's also why I pointed the hinge that way a little bit. Maybe if I would have kept it perfectly centered, they would have stood up all the way. But I wanted to make sure that if it was going to go one side or the other, that it went that way. And so I pointed it that way just a little bit. But overall, that was really a pretty good rig. From almost all the way horizontal to, I don't know if it was probably better than 45 degrees before it went around. Worked out pretty good. That spider leg system on there kept it from rotating like that first limb did. You know, that's what caused that first one to come off a little bit early. Is I only had one rope on it and it was kind of had some side weight on it, and so it wanted to rotate off that hinge, and that ended up causing the hinge to fail earlier, and we want that hinge to stay on there as long as possible. So the spider leg did its trick. This ought to be a fun one. We got pretty good clearance over the house for this branch, but I can't lift it because it's got too much stuff above it. So I've got a notch cut on that side. We got the rope tied up there somewhere close to the balance point. We're gonna cut it and let it sweep around the tree, end up over there somewhere. Here goes the back cut. Nice and slow, and look at that fiber pull. That thing held on the whole way. Alrighty, we're up here in the top. We got this top that needs to come down. It leans, as you can see, up over the house. So we got a rope on it. We're gonna cut it. We're gonna point our cuts kind of that way to get to swing out, swing around and down. Should go pretty smooth. Yeehaw! Nice. Good work down there. Well, folks, I'm on the ground. It's not super late, but it's towards the end of the day, and this tree was bid for 2 days, so we're not going to push to get it done in one, which is great. It's always good when jobs are bid correctly, and that makes things so much better. But this is what we got left here. We got most of the brush down. We got our rigging point, and it's in the last top right there. All these limbs, we're gonna stand these all up with the GRCS first thing tomorrow, and then we'll get the wood out tomorrow, and it'll be a good 2-day tree. Well, we're back up in the tree. It's a new day. I'm feeling fresh, and we're gonna get the rest of this thing down today. Actually, here in a couple hours, probably we'll be having it on the ground. But this is what we have left to do. I'm gonna set you guys up on the ground so you can see what it looks like from down there and get a different perspective. It's gonna be easy peasy. Here I'm taking a ride up on the GRCS. It's actually pulling me up on the rigging rope, but I'm maintaining my slack in my climbing system. So if anything in the rigging system fails, my life support system will hold me up in a tree and I won't fall crash into the ground. So I want to get up there, get things switched over, so that way my weight is 100% on my climbing rope. Come down here to set the rigging rope way out on the tips of this first limb. Take a little swing back there. You can see that rope tied on. Now we're going to get ourselves down to the base of that limb where we can make our cuts.
Put a little pre-tension on it with the winch, the GRCS. We like to pre-tension things so that way when we make that bottom back cut, the limb doesn't just sit down and pinch the saw. Sometimes we get it just right, sometimes we need add a little more pre-tension, but we always know we need at least a little bit to start out with. Lifting with the GRCS some more. A little more cutting, so my saw must have gotten pinched a little bit there. Alright, we're going to go ahead and lift it the rest of the way off the tree here. Going to stand it all the way up. There we go, that was flawless. Those fibers held on until the limb was stood all the way up, so I had to release them by cutting them with the chainsaw. And then the branch just gently swings around the main spar there, where it can be lowered, and then the ground crew can deal with it as it comes down. Got the rope tied out on the next limb. Gonna go ahead and make the cuts here. A little bit of pre-tension. You can see it separating the limbs there. Oh wait, I'm sorry. We're just straight rigging it. I must have already made the cuts and we're ready to go. This one's really wide and got some side weight out there, so those fibers didn't hold on nearly as long, and they've eventually failed right towards the end of the stroke, which was fine. Just not quite as smooth as when they hold on the whole way. Alright, then this big limb down here was so big and it had this wide secondary limb on it that we wanted to rig that off separate. I had a tagline on the butt. It probably wasn't necessary, but it just kept things a little more docile, just keep things from swinging around super wild. Also gave the ground crew something to manipulate and pull the limb in their favorable direction before it got to the ground. So you can see they're doing that there as the limb comes down. Alrighty, now we're taking the big limb. This is probably the biggest limb in this tree, at least the biggest one that we used the GRCS to lift. And it was quite the experience. It was quite the size. You can see the size of the stem wood on the limb down towards the tree there. It was pretty thick and heavy. I don't know if you'll be able to see it compared to me. I'm hiding behind a tree so I don't get hit, but it was all that little electric saw wanted to do to make that cut. I'm going to tie that rigging rope back onto me so they can lift me back up into the tree. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you go up and down a tree enough times, it really saves a lot of energy to have the GRCS lift you up there. Alrighty, we're all set up in the top. We got a pull rope going down to the ground crew. You can see that there. I'm going to make the cuts, and they're going to pull this top over. Just like that, all the brush is out of the tree.